this bring awareness about what's happening in the country, how are we fighting Putin's regime.
Those calls for awareness come from Dasha Navalny. Her dad is Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who has been in prison for 2 years, spending much of his sentence in solitary confinement. His story is the subject of the documentary Navalny.
If you are killed, if this does happen, what message do you leave behind to the Russian people?
The voice behind the camera is the film's Canadian director, Daniel Roher. His documentary investigates Navalny's assassination attempt in 2020 and his journey back to Russia.
It's very simple. Never give up.
Now, just weeks after winning Best Documentary at the British Academy Film Awards,
Navalny.
Rohr's film is up for an Oscar at next Sunday's Academy Awards. I spoke to him about his time with Navalny and the message he hopes to spread. Daniel Roher, thank you for being here. I appreciate you making the time because I know you're very, very busy right now.
Well, it's an honor to be on the show, Rosie. I'm such a fan of yours. I've been watching your show for years. So to me, this is very special. Thank you for having me.
That's very sweet of you to say. I want to start by asking how you did this, how you pitched this documentary to Alexei Navalny and convinced him that you should be the one to follow him around with a camera like this.
Well, you know, so often, Rosie, making documentaries is the art of being in the right place at the right time. And this film really embodies that spirit. I had the chance to go and meet Navalny and pitch him and almost explain to him why a documentary was important and valuable for him in the winter of 2020. And it was only because I happened to be working on another project with Christo Grozev, one of the protagonists of the film. Christo is an investigative journalist with Bellingcat who had been investigating Navalny's poisoning, reached out to Navalny and said, I have a lead. I want to share my information with you. And Navalny was receptive to Christo. And because of Christo's pedigree, we were able to go and pitch Navalny. And in Navalny, I found someone who was immediately charismatic. Alexei has this quality that's often ascribed to master politicians. He makes you feel seen and heard, and he's charismatic. And that charisma is very dangerous if you're me trying to make a discerning critical film. And so I had to maintain that skepticism from the very beginning.
Yeah, and you did do that, and there were some moments even where you had to ask him some uncomfortable questions, and he had to manage that. But you also got there obviously at a moment where he was trying to figure out the poisoning, and you saw him at the hospital, and then that incredible moment in the documentary where he manages to get one of the people involved to essentially confess to him. Was this all sort of luck? Was this planned? What was that moment like for you?
Yeah, I mean, this film, it's like miracle on top of miracle. The documentary gods, one after the other, bestowing us with these extraordinary things happening that you can't possibly predict. I think a skill of any good documentary filmmaker is the ability to go with the flow and just see where the story takes you. And it's as if every single day we were being blessed with another piece of gold. As if we were panning and we were picking up more golden nuggets every single day. And chief among them was this phone call. Of course, we never could have predicted that Navalny would have literally got one of his would-be assassins on the phone and tricked this moron into divulging every single detail of the assassination plot. I don't speak a word of Russian, so when we were shooting that film, I didn't exactly know what people were saying. But I didn't have to have any language skills to fully understand what was happening. And it was just as stunning being in the room as it is to watch that scene in the final film.
Yeah, I mean, you just need their facial expressions to understand how meaningful that phone call is, for sure. What was it? I mean, you've talked about how charismatic Navalny is, but what was it about his politics or his sort of personal mission statement that attracted you to his story?
Well, I thought Navalny was one of the most compelling political figures on earth. Here's a guy who has the moral courage to stand up to this regime, despite the consequences to his life, the risk to his family, and that in and of itself is interesting. When it comes to Navalny's politics, we didn't always agree on politics. We would often spar and go back and forth on political issues, whatever was dominating the news cycle. But I think he really respected that. And in our dialogue, he found someone who didn't always agree with him and wasn't afraid to question him. But the core of Navalny's political identity, I would say, is his belief in dialogue above all else. In democracy, it's a messy, challenging business. And in order to make it work, you have to be able to have conversations with everyone, not just conversations with the nice people. And that was a really big learning experience for me. I think for my own political identity, that was my greatest takeaway from my time with Alexei.
Were you surprised that he was really, I don't know if stubborn's the right word, but really believed that he could go back to Russia after he recovered from this assassination attempt?
I've obviously thought a lot about that. This is what I think of when I'm falling asleep at night, is why did he go back, just like everyone else in the world? And I wonder how effective he would be today if he was in exile, but free outside of his country. But at the end of the day, it brings to mind, this thought of like, if not him, who, and if not now, when. Every other opposition leader has either been murdered or exiled. Navalny, going back, established himself as the moral leader of the nation. And although critics might speculate that he has a savior complex or something like this, at the end of the day, he is one of the only people who had the moral courage to go back. And whether you like him or not, whether you agree with his politics or not, good people around the world must support his moral clarity and his moral courage, especially in the face of this brutal invasion, where now Alexei Navalny is the #1 loudest anti-war advocate in the country, and he's languishing because of it.
You obviously are still in touch with him and with his family, his daughter and his wife. He's been in prison for 2 years now. I know he certainly wasn't doing well earlier this year. What do you know about his current condition and how they're treating him in prison?
Well, regrettably, I'm not in touch with him directly. I'm in touch with his wife and his children. But look, at this film, our story that we've told doesn't have a happy ending. No. Navalny is in prison. He's in solitary confinement. He's the only prisoner in the Russian penal system who is specifically in solitary confinement. And the reason he's in solitary confinement is because of his anti-war advocacy. And that's incredibly challenging for me. This film has thrusted my life into new heights. I've experienced success that I've never dreamed of. The film's nominated for an Oscar, but all of it is colored by the fact that Navalny is languishing in his prison cell. And the bittersweet reality is that he's never seen the movie. And it is all of our dreams and aspirations that I get to rent a cinema in Moscow one day in the hypothetical Russia of the future, and I get to show him our film.
Do you think that because of the conflict that's been going on now for more than a year, that things have been worse for Navalny, that there was maybe an opportunity for him before this started, but now that is lost? Or do you foresee the fact that people are becoming more conscious of what Russia is doing as an opportunity for him?
Well, I think first and foremost, we have to acknowledge that the reality in Russia right now is grim. It's dark. There is a war's worth of darkness that envelops that nation. But for millions of Russians, Navalny's bravery, his resilience, and his seemingly unbreakable spirit represent a small flicker of light. And I think that is immeasurably valuable. Navalny asks of his supporters to be courageous and to be hopeful. Navalny himself touts his own hope as his cornerstone value. And I would ask that the world takes the page out of Navalny's playbook. We have to remain hopeful. Although it looks bleak now, the future of Russia is prone to change. If we look at history, the future of Russia changes quickly. And so I have hope he survives. And it's my hope that if he survives and when he survives, his impact on the future of Russian history is unfulfilled and he's able to accomplish a great deal.
Well, it is an incredible documentary, as I told you before. It is actually unbelievable to watch. So congratulations on that, and good luck at the Oscars. Obviously, Canada will be cheering for our friend, the Canadian. Thanks, Daniel, so much for the time.
I really appreciate it, Rosie. Thank you for having me.